Welcome to some crypto chaos and what I believe might be one of the best opportunities of 2026. That's actually a relative strength play, looking for an ETH-BTC long. So essentially, this chart really stands out to me as having the potential to have a nice squeeze up towards the highs. And just all the signatures I look for in the low timeframes are showing up. And at the same time, we have a very strong narrative on Bitcoin as to why we're selling off. And also on ETH, there's a narrative as to why it is likely to have more strength. So yeah, a lot of things are lining at the moment. You can see I've got a position on here. This is a paper account. I have also got a personal account, but with my personal account, it's actually a synthetic position. So I actually had to buy ETH, sell Bitcoin, and basically artificially engineer a ETH-BTC position. I couldn't get the sizing quite perfect because the increments that I was using for my broker doesn't actually allow me to get the exact right increment. So it's slightly skewed to long ETH, but that fits my thesis anyway. It just means that I have a little bit more downside risk as well. But yeah, I'll jump into it in a moment. But to start with, there's also another trade that, let's see if I can find it. This entire trade idea actually started off as a Bitcoin short idea, seeing the narrative that we had on Bitcoin as to why traders were likely getting trapped above 100K, and the breakdown and failure to reach 100K would make it likely we were going to reach a lot lower. At the same time, ETH showing reasons of accumulating down here, both technically as well as fundamentally in this area there was accumulation. So we're dropping into a previous era of accumulation. Bitcoin has a massive narrative, and if I get to that narrative in a second, but then on ETH-BTC, we have the technical setting up for what looks like it could be an incredible short squeeze, and I believe it's likely to be one of the sickest trades of the start of the year, the first part of 2026. So yeah, I've just got myself positioned on it, actually using a synthetic play by longing ETHUSD, shorting BTCUSD, and that's giving me the equivalent of a long ETH-BTC. And you can see that over here on MT5. No stops at the moment because the stop loss is based on the ratio, but when the ratio hits certain points, it'd be about a $250 loss if it was to come to that. So I'm perfectly happy with putting on that position there. Once I've got that position on, this one is just a paper position, but once I've got that position on and we begin to move in my direction, this is my initial entry. As we're taking out this swing low, I'm looking for a push higher. If we can get that and show displacement, then that I'll add in there. And then if we get a further displacement, so second leg after a small base, then that becomes where I'll really scale into the position because it's a very specific framework I have that would enable me to catch the move up with a lot tighter risk. But the reason I'm expecting this particular low to reject us back up is because I recognize this as being a squeeze themed trade. And in a squeeze environment, you want to see these downtrends that maybe break a low, maybe don't. But in any case, they don't get very far below these levels, react straight back up. And the idea is kind of that anyone who's going short, anyone who's trying to catch the continuation, lower low, lower high, they are waiting for that lower low. When that fails to happen, then that's what can result in a squeeze. And with all these smooth highs up here, as well as the narrative of the facts that institutions a lot of the time use ETH as a hedge to BTC. Let's see. So ETH is a fundamental reason to go up, which is over here. So essentially we've got 5K. It's a level people have been watching for a while. You can see that we came up, just tapped this high out, failed to reach 100k, 5k, sorry. Dropping aggressively back into the range, we have these smooth lows down here that I reckon we could dip back below. But this previous area of accumulation, there was a news driver that came out at this time. There was a not a hedge fund, a institution announced a $250 million private placement to becoming an ETH treasury, and this opened up the door for other companies to also become ETH treasuries, and that increased the demand for ETH, and that's why you see this displacement up through here. And if you look at this area right here, this is where we begin to rally over on ETHBTC. So that relative strength had shifted. We're now dropping back into that previous area. And now if we jump to the main part of this whole story, and that's the Bitcoin 100k level, that bright green line. And I'm going to talk about why this is so significant and gives me a lot of conviction in this trade, as well as show the executions of catching this short. So I'm sure you've been hearing about Bitcoin a lot recently, especially throughout 2025. Everyone was talking about how now it's at 100k. There's nothing stopping Bitcoin now. Everyone's going to pile in. Trump's talking about it. Institutions are buying it, and it's just going to accelerate and get parabolic from here. So hits 100k. Everyone was talking about how it's going to hit 2 million in a few months. With a bit of hindsight, you can see that that clearly was not the case, with the high coming in at 126k. So there's a very large gap between expectations and reality right here. We have an enormous amount of retail, and literally everybody in the world bought Bitcoin above 100k. 100k was that psychological level that everyone's looking at, and that's kind of like the line in the sand. If you bought above 100k, people aren't going to want to sell it below 100k. And that's why when we failed to retest 100k, that was incredibly bearish. That happened here, but then on the lower time frame, also when we broke down so aggressively through 100k, we also failed to test it, and that a lot of the time is a indication that we're likely to actually be breaking lower and trapping traders on one side of the market. And there's another example of this being the case. Just to show you what I mean, this works with any kind of institutional level or big figure level, or a major obvious high time frame high or low, such as this previous all-time high back from start of 2025. If we zoom in, we consolidated above it, but then what happens when we break down through it? We drop below it, come back above, and then aggressively break down. Absolutely no retest to that level. That failure to retest shows that heaviness and that it's likely trying to squeeze. Exact same thing happening over here. That's just a high time frame chart. But exact same thing happening here, where we failed to retest that level, break down aggressively, consolidate, rally up, and then sell off. Now I can jump over to here real quick and show the executions of that trade. If we go to the hourly time frame, so that was my entry up there. So pretty much nailed it, which I was very stoked with. And because of the narrative I just talked about, I was very confident in holding it. I did, however, close out just down here because we were so extended. I figured, okay, close out, reposition myself. And then I had 2 weeks of some really tricky trading and basically blowing my accounts. So I didn't have the mental bandwidth to reposition myself, but there was a beautiful inverse SMT over here that would have been a great way to enter. But I'll go ahead and show the executions. Wrong account maybe. It should be right. 1 second. Execution labels. Maybe it was this account. No. Your executions aren't showing up for some reason. What if I refresh? Oh, now I'm going to have to log in back in. log in again. Well, it appears that my trading data has disappeared. Like all my positions are still on. Like if I go over here and go to XLE, like position's still there, but once again, no, you can't see any execution marks. That is weird, but what I'll do is I'll open up CTrader, go to that same account and see if I can find it. Analyze. So yeah, had a very rough, a very volatile few weeks. So a bit of a down period in through here. Sized up, got some massive wins, then took some massive losses, and then here we are. But let's see if I can find the history. Okay, and now we have all the positions. Realize USD 139. We find the two big ones, these two. Here we go, now it's showing. So these are the trades I took. That was the entry. Whoops, just disappeared. Entry right up there, and I'll show what I was looking at. And then exit. If we go to a higher time frame, be easy to see. Go to the 4 hour. Exiting over here. So not sure why that didn't show up in trading view, but that was the trade, shorting up there below 100k, exiting down there, and that was the stop outs. And then this one I took a partial. So this was a partial, very extended as well, but it was exactly what I was looking for. But then eventually I think I probably took some other losses on this day and figured, well, there's no point leaving my stop loss all the way up to the top. I'll exit here because it's clearly coming up towards these highs, and I'll look to re-enter. But didn't quite get around to that. But overall, in this time period between here and here, 140 bucks. There were all these other little positions. In fact, these shouldn't even be in there. These are the all-time positions, so it was actually a lot more. These positions through here. This is all the time, all time. That's not right. Oh, it's 2025. I need to make that 2026. Apply. There we go. 177 US dollars they made. These small little losses were just me trying to reposition, and then basically on a very small micro signature, and weren't really good trades at all. But overall in this trade, including those small losses, it was a $177 trade. That was, I think, initial risk was $70. Yep, $70 initial risk with a stop loss sitting just up here, just a bit above 100k. And the whole thesis was that if we fail to reach 100k, that means we are extremely heavy, and the market's going to absolutely dump, which is exactly what happened. So BTCUSD, but yeah, no idea why the execution marks don't show up, but that's all good. Now, where are we at? Yeah, so I'll continue walking through this trade, this short, and why it was so significant. But yeah, essentially we had that 3 drive up through the highs. I actually did a post of this on, I put it on my Twitter just that it was out on the internet somewhere. I'm getting lost already, but I posted this screenshot up there, talking about what I was seeing, and I especially liked the narrative. But then after that, we're also looking at the 3 drives into the highs and the aggressive break lower. So 3 drive, that's a classic distribution pattern. And then that aggressive break lower gave the narrative that, okay, we are trapping traders up in this area, and we're unlikely to reach back to that impulse origin. We've also got this very obvious low right down at the 80s over here. And what that is this swing low. We don't spend time consolidating above 100k and then break down aggressively and not reach 80k. but we did here. So when we started pulling back up, I saw this as engineering liquidity to come down further. Then we have such a major low down here. If you imagine anyone who was buying above 100k, where are they going to put their stop? Well, their stop's going down to that really obvious swing low. What stands out to me about this low is that also, if we look at this previous high, it's a nice support and resistance line. So traders see that as a strong area to put their stop. What's below that strong stop area for a stop is a nice impulse low that just happens to line up nicely with the 68k, and the reason that's significant is 70k is a big figure level, 68k is 2k below that, and that just lines up beautifully with this impulse low. So I think this is a very, very high probability target to reach for, and that was going to be what I was going to hold for. But as you saw before, I closed out both positions in that same area. Continue the sell-off. I didn't manage to reposition on Bitcoin. I did, however, get in on. So I got in on XRP instead on this particular trade account. So if I open up XRP USD, so this particular trade, very similar thesis. I preferred this short actually, and the reason being, if we look at the daily chart, but the weekly chart as well, we had this massive wick. Traders typically see long wicks as being a bearish rejection or a bullish rejection. In this case, they would have seen it as a bullish rejection, and that can be the case. However, when we fail to displace and then begin rolling back over, it becomes a very strong draw on price to reach lower into that wick, because there's going to be a lot of traders long who bought up here, and as we drift lower, what you want to see is it remain heavy. Now, what I wanted to see in this area was us rally up, fail, and break down aggressively. That's precisely what happened. I dropped down a bit lower. So we have all these smooth highs through here. We consolidate. We then get this impulsive rally. This gives the opportunity for any bulls to get long. We spent a bunch of time up there, a good 12 days or so, and then aggressively break down. So in this area here, I was expecting we should remain very heavy. This is the area where traders were left trapped offside. And the reason I got shorts right here is we have this long wick. Now, like I mentioned with this long wick, if traders are buying up through this level, what tends to happen is if you measure the midpoint of that wick, price tends to want to remain below that level once it gets below it, with the idea being that any traders who bought, they bought above that midpoint, and this is seen as a premium with below being a discount. And this is exactly what we see happening here on the lower time frame. We get rid of this wick, and then we put a midpoint of this long wick here. So what happens is we print a long wick to this support level and rejects off it. So this is enticing people to buy. What happens after that? We begin to consolidate and begin breaking down, failing to take out highs. That's an indication of a squeeze. And then we break down aggressively below that long wick. When we come back up to it, we 3 days in a row, 1, 2, 3 days, fail to close above that midpoint. And that's why I got short up there, with the stop loss being at the high end of that long wick. And so that's invalidation of the thesis for went up there. And you can see that worked out really beautifully. I've got a partial take profit at the midpoint between this swing low and that swing low down there. And then looking to see if we can reach a bit further. So that's the XRP trade. On ETH, however, ETHBTC, this is really where I'm focused at the moment. And I mentioned earlier about how we got the, let's see, let's find it. I'm getting a bit lost here. So I've been spending all day on the computer just basically trying to buy this. You can see I've got all these demo positions on, and I bought them all. I bought them last night. So like I set a limit buy order down here. just before I went to bed. I actually couldn't sleep all night because I was just stressing about how on earth am I going to get exposure to this trade. That just shows you how much I like this trade and why I'm perfectly fine with putting on some risk. And my issue was that there aren't many places where you can directly buy ETHBTC, hence why I ended up having to make a synthetic position, which is still just sitting at break even. But yeah, there aren't many places that offer it. Now, there's a very good chance we do roll back over and take out this low, but that's why I've got my invalidation all the way down here. But yeah, I couldn't sleep last night trying to think of how I could get long. I woke up in the morning, I Googled I asked ChatGPT about the different broker options and found out that a certain broker had this asset. So I went through the process of signing up for the broker and like verifying my ID and everything and then transferring money in. The meantime, price had just come off the lows and like it was moving higher the whole time. And I was just yeah, trying to get that account loaded, and finally I managed to load it up. I put it on a trade, and the spread was insane. Like I bought here, and I got filled up here, so a massive spread. And they only offered 2 times leverage, which wasn't very much because I wanted to put more size on, and like I emptied out my bank account entirely to do this as well. And so I needed more size so that I'd be able to put on, I had more leverage, so I could put on the size that I actually wanted to risk, so that when I got paid, like later this week when I get my paycheck, I can load up my account. So I completely emptied my bank account into it, put on the trade, and then it wasn't what I was looking for. So then I went through the process of going on Femix and Coinbase, and then deciding which one to use, and finding I could margin trade with 5 times leverage, which is a bit better. Loaded though, I tried loading both of them up, but my bank doesn't allow it for some reason. And yeah, so then just had to resort to the synthetic trade. And the only issue with it, like I much prefer CFD brokers and black ball spin all goods. But the only issue is that the smallest increment lot size is 0.01 lot on Bitcoin, which means that the smallest position I can have at the moment is 250 US dollars essentially risk, which is perfectly fine. Like I want to have that kind of position on. I just usually like having slightly smaller position sizes that I can take a partial. But in this particular instance, I won't be able to. But once we do get a bit higher on ETHBTC, I will be looking to add into the position quite heavily. Go on the daily, it should be able to show you exactly where I'm looking to add. But on the weekly actually. So on the weekly, where I'm looking to add is going to be one, if we get a reaction from here, I'm looking for some nice strong displacements up into this range. And then I'd look to add into the position up in this area. Once we get that, ignore all these boxes. But the main area is this. So once we've got displacement and then taken out a short-term low, got a continuation displacement, and then a pullback. And the continuation displacement is only valid if we displace and then we hold up there. We don't immediately reject back down. If that is the case, I should be able to put a stop relatively tight, maybe even below this short-term low, and trust that this should begin to squeeze up through these highs. So that's my game plan, is not to take any partials actually on this position. And once that happens, then I can load up into this position. I'll use the entire risk that I have on down here as collateral to build my position and get as big as I can. And then if I do take partials, it would be at a minimum at a premium high, such as up here. But yeah, looking to load up into the position as it moves in my favor. So this, although it seems kind of small to start with, like I do believe Bitcoin goes lower, and well, I'm short Bitcoin, so that's all good. ETH moves with Bitcoin, and I'm long ETH. So it feels a bit weird putting on a position knowing that it could, like, it's not completely my bias at the moment, but because it's a relative strength position, it means that the trade should be, like, even if it goes down or if it goes up, as long as this chart's moving higher, then it should be making money. And the reason why I bought right here, like, it doesn't look like the best entry, when you just look at it like this, but it's because I understand that this is a squeeze theme, and in a squeeze theme, which is showing me it is so far, this is the type of price action you want to buy in, where it's failing to take out lows, it's failing to drop into these long wicks, and then it's getting the exact same pattern I mentioned on the high time frame here. So over here, I mentioned I wanted to see so a big reversal, a downtrend that turns into a failure swing, displacement, short-term low, displacement, entry. If we look over on this side, we have the same thing. We have a reversal, a failure swing, that fails to take out this low. So it's an exact fractal of this high time frame right here. And then a displacement, it consolidates a bit and then displaces again. And that's why I bought right here, because it was showing me all the signatures I look for. And I wanted to buy down here, but I didn't have my account set up at the time, and I was struggling to figure out how to put capital into it. This capital over here, 400 NZD, managed to load it up, and that's because for some reason my paycheck came in on Sunday this week, which doesn't usually. So I was relieved to see it come through. So I instantly put almost all of it into this account, leaving a little bit for the week, and then next week, because I get paid weekly, I can put the rest of the size in that I'm going to need for this trade, and then look to load up as it moves in my direction, which I don't even know which direction that is. I don't know if there's going to be an ETH if I'm going to be adding down here or adding up here, but in any case, if I'm adding, it will be in profit because there'll be a relative strength in ETH versus Bitcoin. So, like, if Bitcoin heads lower at the moment, I'll make money in Bitcoin, but I'll lose money in ETH, and it will kind of balance itself out. And the same with to the upside. But if ETH moves higher, more relatively more than Bitcoin, or moves lower relatively less than Bitcoin, then I'll be profitable on that trade. So, bit of a different trade, and I'm pretty excited for it just because it's so technical and different, and also just the narrative that I built out with this analysis I did the other week, where we have the very clean technicals on ETHBTC. We have reason as to why Bitcoin could have a significant sell-off after we've been encouraging people to buy for over a year above 100k, and that's failed miserably. There's a lot of bag holders. There's a very nice low down here at 50k. And at the same time, ETH is actually showing bullishness on the high time frame. It's leaving these smooth highs perfectly at 5k as well. It's showing previous areas of accumulation down here, as well as the facts that we had fundamental news drivers in this previous area of accumulation that suggested there was a lot of institutional buying down here, which is when we had that ETH Treasury announcement and the likelihood for other companies to also be looking to do the same thing, and we're dropping into that area. So the facts that we're reaching that area right now on ETH, Bitcoin is proving that narrative of trapping traders above the highs and breaking down is being correct. And then ETH, BTC hitting our point of interest all at the same time. All that stuff together just makes this an A triple plus setup, in my opinion. And yeah, I'm just keen to put on as much size as I can. Initial entry right here. And if it does get up into this range, I'm going to be fairly aggressive with my adding, just trusting that it won't come back below this low. Yeah, and we'll see how it turns out. So I think that's about all I wanted to go over on this trade, but you can see that we've been moving in upwards direction slightly on ETH, and that reflects in the P&L being above zero, basically, because it was in drawdown for a bit. But yeah, it's just interesting to see how, being short one asset and long the other while they're perfectly correlated. If you ever want to do it, all you got to do is go to ChatGPT or whatever LLM you're using, and just tell it what your trade idea is. If you want to have a relative strength play, if you think that the Dow is going to be relatively weaker than RTY for a bit, you can express that uh, by shorting YM and going. Sorry, is that right? If Dow is going to be relatively weaker than RTY, then you can short Dow, long RTY, and have that as a relative strength play. So it doesn't matter if it's going to be bullish or bearish. It just matters that you are right on which one's going to be stronger or not. And it's a pretty cool way to trade, in my opinion, because a lot of the time it is really obvious that one asset is showing relative strength. And I say really obvious, but that's probably just based on the technicals that I've learned in particular, looking at SMT on the lows and things like that, um, which is quite nuanced as well. But the SMT on the lows, you can see what stocks or what assets are holding up more than others in a bear market, and vice versa. That can give you an idea of what has the relative strength. And so I'm pretty excited to explore this a bit more, actually. So maybe even finding some stocks and finding, stocks in the same sector, that one has more relative strength than the other, and just trading it based on that. Just, yeah, I'm sure there's use cases for it. But obviously it helps having a high time frame chart that just is screaming by me now, which is the ETHBTC chart. Yeah, really keen to see what happens here. If it does aggressively sell off, and I've sized it so that I lose 250 if it comes into this area. If I can delete this now. But because of the trade idea, I expect it's likely to react from here. I'm giving it room down to this area. I might even move my stop down to the actual low, expecting this because it is a squeeze theme trade. Ideally, it reacts from here and heads back up. But if it does want to and it drifts down like this, that's fine as long as it goes straight back up, because this is actually even better. The idea being that people are looking to sell the lower high and then take profit at that lower low. And if it fails to reach that lower low and fails to take it out, so the stop would be precisely below that low, fails to take it out and reacts back up, that would indicate like the ability for it to really squeeze higher. So I'm perfectly fine with that as well, but that's also why I'm not adding to the position right now, and why I'd prefer to add up in this area if we get this kind of reaction, because then I can see that the squeeze is underway, and then I can, let's say that thing does happen, then I can manage my risk. I can move my stop up to here or up to here, and then really scale into that position. So I just wanted to have a small core position on to start with, and just that I'm in the trade, I have some exposure, so I can actually sleep at night. And then if it runs up through all these smooth highs I've been leaving, and then it offers that other entry, I can use all that risk that I've just put on, that I've just gained, to add to the position and get a lot bigger. And by that point, I should be up just about 1R, or just over 1R maybe. Not too sure. Hold up. I'm getting quite lost. My internet hasn't been the best either. Yeah. So if it does get up to here, and let's say I get an entry up here, be up 1R, I can use all that risk to add to the position. Plus the new stop will be probably tighter. Like I'll probably be using a stop, something like that. So tighter stop, I can use that full 250, let's say, US dollars for that stop. And then I'll also, if this happens, then that's going to prove my thesis is very, very likely to be playing out exactly how I expect. So I'll be sizing into the position quite large, and I will have more money by then to do so with. So I want to see if I can get really big in that trade if it starts playing out in my thesis, and not do a Bitcoin on myself where it goes so well that I close the position, which I closed down here. Sure, it's a nice place to close, but it would be nicer to catch this drop lower, which is exactly what my thesis suggested. Is if we fail to reach 100k, that is telling you, okay, it is really, really weak. And that is when you should be really excited for that downside. Squeeze isn't over yet. If I do want to get into this position again, like I would perfectly happily take another short. But in order to do so, I need to first see some more narrative that we've enticed people to buy again, but it looks like we're beyond that point. It looks like it's pretty obvious to everyone by now that it is a short and it is selling off and there's nothing you can do about it. But in saying that, we are at this support and resistance area. So I'm sure there are traders seeing this as a great buying opportunity right now. So maybe we consolidate here a few days. What I want to see is us actually start showing kind of similar price action as up here actually. So I'll zoom in and show you the exact moments that that short was valid for the continuation, which I missed. But essentially we have this nice swing high here at 1200 on Friday, engineering a really obvious basket pull. We run that out on ETH, however, on BTC, we fail to run out that high. So that's your initial BTC showing that our weakness right there. And then we have the inverse SMT. So this is a very key thing for SMT, is when you are looking for a real distribution. This is always the case on the biggest moves when there's real distribution happening, as you have the asset that made the high, then makes a lower high, and the asset that made the lower high then makes a high. So that's your signal, but then the displacement we get after that is showing you that that is indeed the case. We got this displacement lower. I did spot it right here, and I was thinking of leaving a limit sell up at this level just in case price decided to come and spike up and then spike down. But it just rolled over and sold off. Some really beautiful price action, and just such a beautiful trade because of that narrative of the 100k level being so obvious and being such a strong narrative that gave me the confidence in this trade. It's not very usual that I'm taking these positions and holding them for such a massive move, because like I was up significant money in this move for me. This was before I had quite, was it? I started my new job like about a month ago now, less than a month ago. But like yeah, I've only just started receiving money again after being really, really broke for a long time. So having this kind of a move, normally I'd be like, sweating the whole way down, thinking, oh, I need to take this money right now. But just having that security of knowing that, okay, I've got a job and I can always go and get more money, made it a lot easier to hold the position and manage it correctly. Also, I've been taking my biggest losses these last, just this week probably, actually, was probably one of my largest losing weeks. I had my two largest losing trades ever. Well, no, my largest losing trade, and then the day before I lost a significant amount of money as well. So very negative week, but I'm feeling really excited by it and motivated by it because I can see precisely what I was doing wrong. And also, most importantly, I lost sizing up on an AA plus setup. So I lost sizing up and swinging the bat when I saw what I needed to see. The setup even worked. I just put my stop loss precisely to the tick in the wrong place. You can see the previous video. I actually show you the 1 second chart and how I got filled at the absolute lowest low for my biggest single trade loss ever. Which was kind of, it's annoying, but it was kind of funny as well. But just having that security of a job and knowing that I've got that, it made it not so bad. I was like, okay, I know I can size up when I need to, and next time I see it, I can size up properly and execute really well. And I just had such a clear, motivated mindset despite taking such a big hit. So it kind of goes to show how important it can be that just to have something happening on the side as well as trading. So that can be a side hustle or a side business or just something you're working towards, but just something that you know is there can help you trade and execute a lot better. But yeah, so I suppose this will do for this video. I'm sure I'm probably sitting at break even still, literally break even, so it's not moving much, but that is pretty normal for a Saturday/Sunday. Bitcoin and ETH, but crypto doesn't seem to move very much on the weekends. I think it's probably because all the degenerates from the week who are trading Nasdaq jump over onto Bitcoin and get chopped up. It's probably what it is. So we're likely to sit here at this support level, allow more people to jump in on the longs, and then get that tank lower. 68k, that would be a very likely first target for me. And then below that, no idea where we're going. But 50k is not off the cards. Or maybe we dip down to 68k, run back up, and then get people excited for getting above 100k again, then break down. But in any case, I need to see something of a bit cleaner narrative to get a trade, or as I mentioned, if we can get some really obvious inverse SMT, then maybe I'll look to reposition myself. But at the moment, well, I mean, I am short technically, but that's being hedged with a ETH long as well. So yeah, new trading method and attempt at a hedge.